Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Arupati Prabhu, would you like to do the Pramadwani?
Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajikacharya Stotra Sadasya His Divine Grace. इसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय. जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्र सदाशिव His Divine Grace. भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती महाराज गोस्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय. ISKCON founder आचार्य डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय. आनंद कवटी वैष्णव वृंद की जय. ना बिचारा इलाज ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिव सदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धनाथ जी की जय. वृंदावन धाम की जय. मायापुर नवदीप धाम की जय. नीलाचल क्षेत्र से जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. भक्ति देवी की जय. गंगामय यमुनामय की जय. श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय. बृहद विदंगा ट्रांसजेंडर बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय. समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय. गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Welcome everybody to Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. It is Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, beginning with 4:22:29 today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, we'll begin with 4:22:29. Nimite sati sarvatra jaladav api purusha atmanascha parasyapi vidam pasyati nanyada. Translation. Only because of different causes does a person see a difference between himself and others, just as one sees the reflection of a body appearing differently manifested on water, on oil, or in a mirror. Purport. The spirit soul is one, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is manifested in Svamsa and Vibhinamsa expansions. The jivas are Vibhinamsa expansions. The different incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are Svamsa expansions. Thus, there are different potencies of the Supreme Lord, and there are different expansions of the different potencies. In this way, for different reasons, there are different expansions of the same one principle, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This understanding is real knowledge, but when the living entity is covered by the upadhi or designated body, he sees differences, exactly as one sees differences in reflections of oneself on water, on oil, or in a mirror. When something is reflected on the water, it appears to be moving. When it's reflected on ice, it appears fixed. When it is reflected on oil, it appears hazy. The subject is one, but under different conditions, it appears differently. When the qualifying factor is taken away, the whole appears to be one. In other words, when one comes to the Paramahamsa, or perfectional stage of life by practicing Bhakti Yoga, he sees only Krishna everywhere. For him, there is no other objective. In conclusion, due to different causes, the living entity is visible in different forms as an animal, human being, demigod, tree, etc. Actually, every living entity is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 5:18, therefore, it is explained that one who actually sees the spirit soul does not distinguish between a learned brahmana and a dog, an elephant or a cow. Pandita Samadarshana, one who is actually learned, sees only the living entity, not the outward covering. Differentiation is therefore the result of different karma, or fruitive activities. And when we stop fruitive activities, turning them into acts of devotion, we can understand that we are not different from anyone else, regardless of the form. This is only possible in Krishna consciousness. In this movement, there are many different races of men from all parts of the world participating. But because they think of themselves as servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, They do not differentiate between black and white, yellow and red. The Krishna conscious movement is therefore the only means to make the living entities free of all designations. Would someone like to comment on this? I don't have any comments myself.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Kritas Jayādvaita Swami Nami Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Nivadi Pasha Desha Tadine. In this purport, we see when the living entity is covered by the upadhi or designated body, he sees differences. So, in our covered or conditional state, we have these different designations, upadhis. And just as the analogy given here in the purport about the reflection on the water is moving, on the oil is fixed, on the ice is fixed, and on the oil is steady. Though the subject matter is the same, it appears differently. Similarly, the living entity, the way he is conditioned, he sees it differently. But on the platform of the perfection stage of life, he sees Pandita Samadarshina. He sees it, everything with equal vision. Vidya Vinaya Sampana Brahmana Gavi Hastini Suni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. He sees Krishna everywhere. In a dog eater, in an elephant, in a learned saint. He sees Krishna everywhere. So that should be our objective, Pandita Samadarshina, to come from a conditional stage of life to the purified stage of life of pure consciousness instead of conditional consciousness, which is conditioned by our nature, or the pure consciousness covered by our different conditioning. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Madhurpati. Would you like to take the next text?
Okay. Yes, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutta Dakrita Jayādvaita Swami Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutta Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Gauravani Pachani Visheshwani Vadi Pashani Shatari Indre Vishya Kristai Akshiptam Dayatam Manaha Chaitanam Harate Buddhe Stamba Toyam Iva Ridat. When one's mind and senses are attracted to sense objects for enjoyment, the mind becomes agitated. As a result of continually thinking of sense objects, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost, like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank. In this verse, it is very nicely explained how our original Krishna consciousness becomes polluted, and we gradually become almost completely forgetful of our relationship with the Supreme Lord. In a previous verse, it is recommended that we should always keep in touch with the devotional service of the Lord, so that the blazing fire of devotional service can gradually burn into ashes, material desires, and we can become liberated from the repetition of birth and death. This is also how we can indirectly keep our staunch faith in the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the mind is allowed to think of sense gratification continuously, it becomes the cause of our material bondage. If our mind is simply filled with sense gratification, even though we want Krishna consciousness, by continuous practice we cannot forget the subject matter of sense gratification. If one takes up the sannyas order of life but is not able to control the mind, he will think of objects of sense gratification, namely family, society, expensive house, etc. Even though he goes to the Himalayas or the forest, his mind will continue thinking of the objects of sense gratification. In this way, gradually one's intelligence will be affected. When intelligence is affected, one loses his original taste for Krishna consciousness. The example given here is very appropriate. If a big lake is covered all around by long kusha grass, just like columns, the waters dry up. Similarly, when the big columns of material desire increase, the clear water of consciousness is dried up. Therefore, these columns of kusha grass should be cut or thrown away from the very beginning. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has instructed that if from the very beginning we do not take care of unwanted grass in the paddy fields, the fertilizing agents of water will be used by them and the paddy plants will dry up. The material desire for sense enjoyment is the cause of our fall down in this material world, and thus we suffer the threefold miseries and continuous birth, death, old age, and disease. However, if we turn our desires towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord, our desires become purified. We cannot kill desires, we have to purify them of different designations. If we constantly think of being a member of a particular nation, society, or family, and continuously think about them, we become very strongly entangled in the conditioned life of birth and death. But if our desires are applied to the service of the Lord, they become purified. And thus, we become immediately freed from material contamination. Om Jnanatimindasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurmetanyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So, our polluted conditional consciousness needs to be purified. Right? If we contemplate our mind on sense objects, right? Contemplating of Dhyato Vishyan Pumsam, Sangate Shubhajayate, Sangat Sanjayate Kaman, Kaman Krodha Abhijayate. Krodhat Bhavati Sammoha, Sammoha Smriti Vibrama, Smriti Vibrama Buddhi Nashat Pranashati. Bhagavad Gita it is mentioned that how just from contemplation of the sense objects we will develop attachment to the senses. Attachment to sense gratification. That will develop lust. Lust is never fulfilled, so it will develop frustration, ultimately giving rise to anger. Anger gives rise to krodha, dhavati, sammoha, bewilderment of memory. Sammoha, smriti, vibrama. Anger gives rise to delusion. Delusion gives rise to bewilderment of memory, memory loss. Smriti, vibrama. Smriti, vibrama, buddhi nasat. Ultimately, our intelligence will be lost. Buddhi nasat, pranachati, and will fall down. We will not be able to think about Krishna. Also, our sense gratification will take us away from Krishna. And the nice analogy is given in this verse, right? About the lake surrounded by kusha grass, long columns of kusha grass will suck up all the water of the lake. Or the unwanted weeds growing next to the main plant of our bhakti would dry up all the would suck up all the fertilizers and all the things which we have added for the plant will be then sucked up by these unwanted weeds. And ultimately, the main plant which we want to grow, Bhakti Lata Bij, will dry up. Our devotional creeper will dry up by our columns of material desires. So, need is to practice devotional service continuously so that continuous nourishment is there for the soul. Continuous nourishment is there for our devotional keeper to grow nicely, so that we can reach the ultimate goal of serving the Supreme Lord continuously in pure Krishna consciousness. Okay, that's all I had. Anybody else? Let's see. Guru Maharaj is there. Guru Maharaj would like to add something.
Guru Maharaj, would you like to comment? We just read text 30.
30. Yeah, it'll take me some minutes to get properly focused in.
We have a question in the chat. Saraswati Machi, would you be able to take the chat from now on?
Yes.
Also, you can take the next text. I would ask Panchatattva Guru also, but Panchatattva Guru is driving, so won't be able to.
Murari Prabhuji has posted, Hare Krishna, how does a person function in society without recognizing the differences in the bodies of the spirit soul? For example, some animals and people are dangerous and others are harmless. All I can think about is Guru Maharaj has said in one of his classes how although we know that the external material body may be different, the soul is the same, but yet we still interact and treat the different material, the souls that are encased in different material bodies as is appropriate. For instance, like you wouldn't go and embrace a tiger even though you know that they are also part and parcel of Krishna. So there you have to make a discernment as to what is appropriate for your spiritual progress and what isn't. And we're always told to associate with devotees and avoid materialistic people, especially those that are also attached to women and wine and song and a materialistic way of life. So we are told that we have to be discerning in how we associate with others. Hare Krishna. I don't know if Guru Maharaj would like to say something about this.
Well, without being quite plugged in still to fully plugged into the conversation, these differences are well, as I recall, the discussion here is rather strong on oneness, but even when oneness is there, one has to discriminate as needed. But there was this one incident in Boston at one of the universities. Prabhupada was doing a program, and there was a big big attendance of students, and one professor was there. His problem was walking out when some professor was arguing with him, Indian fellow. Everything is one, everything is one, everything is one, everything is one. Finally, Prabhupada took him by the shirt. If everything is one, why don't you wear a cotton ball instead of a shirt? So everything is one, but we don't wear cotton balls instead of shirts. We don't embrace tigers. So there's oneness, but there's always difference also.
I think Guru Maharaj,
We have another question.
in the purport, it was a there was a quotation of Vidya Vinaya Sampanna Brahmana Kaviyasini Samadarshina stage. So probably I think the question could be coming from that, oh, how can we be Samadarshina?
We recognize that within the body of the tiger and within the body of the cow and the Brahmin and the elephant, there's the same spirit soul, but it doesn't mean that we become fools and pretend that there's no difference. Satsuru Maharaj cited an incident from his life before he became a devotee, and he was on LSD, I think, and everything was one, and so he I forget what he did, but he leaped in such a way that he broke his ankle or something like that, because everything was one. You could do anything, and material distinctions wouldn't matter, but space and time and form do matter. So the oneness is true, but individuality and distinction are also true. And dirty, that was quoted?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I'll see it by the by. And I'm not, again, it'll take me one verse to get hooked in properly.
We have another question in the chat box by Danu and Gandhi. It said that without removing weeds while watering the Bhakti Lata Creeper, we will continue watering weeds as well. This is a metaphor. What is an actual example? Could you elaborate?
For Krishna's service, Prabhupada says the devotee is always bold and daring. So we want to have that we're ready to act for Krishna in a bold and daring way. But one may, in the name of boldness and daringness, become offensive. Then it's not, one is thinking that one is being bold and daring, but instead he's being obnoxious and offensive. Just a quick off the top. Or that one becomes critical of devotees and one thinks one is being, what's the word, punctilious about devotional service. One is doing a service by running out to them the particularities of the rules and regulations, but actually one is just becoming, again, critical and offensive. So one has to distinguish. And one thinks that one is doing something for Krishna, but it's really for one's own pride, for one's own, look at me. I'm leading the mridanga. I think I'm leading the kirtan, and I'm playing the mridanga in a very fancy way. And I think I'm contributing to the pleasure of Krishna, but actually I'm showing off. And I don't realize that I'm taking attention away from Krishna, that it's really now all about me. I think that I'm contributing to the kirtan, but my consciousness, I have this weed growing, and I want to be seen. I want to be known, pratishta. So, another example.
Guru Maharaj, would you like me to continue to the next item in the chat box?
Sure.
Praveen Prabhuji says, one student espousing the philosophy of monism asserted that the highest expression of the absolute truth was that all is one. Prabhupada became excited, arguing with him. Taking the man by the shirt collar, Prabhupada shouted, "You say everything is one, but is this cotton shirt the same as a cotton ball? Why don't you wear a cotton ball instead of this shirt?" The Indian technologists surrounded Prabhupada, raising their voices and arguing, while Prabhupada's disciples looked on anxiously. The arguing continued. When a taxi finally arrived, they disengaged their spiritual master from the mass of arguing technologists. Prabhupada considered the evening a success from the Prabhupada Leela.
Yeah, that would have been the same incident.
So, Guru Maharaj, when they talk about these weeds, are these weeds the anarthas that we have, that we're sort of feeding our anarthas rather than paying attention to the Bhakti Lata creeper?
Yes. The weed looks something like devotional service. We think that it's Krishna consciousness, but it's something else. And if we don't pull out those weeds, those anarthas, then they choke the plant.
Thank you so much. Guru Maharaj, would you like to take the text 31 or would you like me to proceed?
31. A moment.
4:22:31.
Yeah. Prasyatyanu smritishchitam jnana brahmsha smriti kshaye tadrodham kavaya prahur atma pranabam atmana. When one deviates from his original consciousness, he loses the capacity to remember his previous position or recognize his present one. When remembrance is lost, all knowledge acquired is based on a false foundation. When this occurs, learned scholars consider that the soul is lost. Purport: the living entity or the soul is ever existing and eternal. It cannot be lost. But learned scholars say that it is lost when actual knowledge is not working. That is the difference between animals and human beings. According to less intelligent philosophers, animals have no soul. But factually, animals have souls. Due to the animal's gross ignorance, however, it appears that they have lost their souls. Without the soul, a body cannot move. That is the difference between a living body and a dead body. When the soul is out of the body is called dead. The soul is said to be lost when there's no proper knowledge exhibited. Our original consciousness is Krishna consciousness because we are part and parcel of Krishna. When this consciousness is misguided and one is put into the material atmosphere, which pollutes the original consciousness, one thinks that he is a product of the material elements. Thus, one loses his real remembrance of his position as part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as a man who sleeps forgets himself. In this way, when the activities of proper consciousness are checked, all the activities of the lost soul are performed on a false basis. At the present moment, human civilization is acting on a false platform of bodily identification. Therefore, it can be said that the people of the present age have lost their souls, and in this respect, they are no better than animals. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nam Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyava Badi Pashtita Deshatarana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. In Bhagavad Gita, Smriti Brahmshad Buddhi Nashat Pranashati. When remembrance is lost, Smriti Brahmshad Buddhi Nashat, then intelligence is also lost. And when intelligence is lost, you're finished. So this is the situation that one identifies with matter. He forgets that he's servant of Krishna. He forgets that he's a spirit soul. He forgets everything about what he is. And he thinks, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, in terms of bodily designations. So all the knowledge he acquires is based on a false foundation. Great learned scholars, but Maya Pratyajnana, their knowledge is stolen by illusion. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, when the ability to discriminate is stolen away, remembrance, the sequence of past experiences is destroyed. The destruction of knowledge is called the destruction of the self. The self can't be destroyed, najayate mriyate va kadachin. But when the knowledge is destroyed, then we say the self is lost. And just like sometimes there's dementia, advanced dementia. The person is there, but we say, he's just not there because the intelligence is not working. So even though the soul is present, the person is not functioning in his true identity. So when a similar thing happens by illusion, one forgets who he is, forgets, who was it? Richard Nixon was someone close to him, did an interview with him after he'd left the White House, and he'd been plunged into severe dementia. And the writer mentioned that in Mr. Nixon's home there was a fish tank, and in the fish tank there was a little plastic White House that was bubbling up water into the tank. And Mr. Nixon was looking at it, said, I think it has something to do with me, but I don't know what. So remembrance was lost, and therefore he couldn't remember what his real position was, what his position had been. So this happens sometimes by fate. But apart from medical conditions in which such things occur, even a person who's, apparently has his head screwed on straight, and he's in possession of his senses and so on, but he forgets really who he is. Just as one forgets during a dream. That another example often given is the dreaming state. In the dreaming state, we forget. We can't remember. Sequences get all screwed up. History gets all screwed up. Who we are gets all screwed up. It's all jumbled in a dream. So Prabhupada said sleeping dream and waking dream. One is apparently awake, but one is dreaming. Dreaming that he's a great man, dreaming that he's got this much money, dreaming this is my wife, this is my money, this is my home. Janasya Mohoya Mahamameti. Hare Krishna.
We have some things in the chat box. Praveen Prabhuji is asking, can core devotional service like chanting japa, hearing Bhagavatam also turn into weeds?
Yeah. If you're just like that example is there that or Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was sitting in a little hut chanting, or sitting in a solitary place chanting, and somebody else set up another little hut and he's chanting, imitating Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. So, and Babaji Maharaj made the comment that one doesn't give birth to a child just by entering the maternity room. So it was anunkar. It was imitation. And that kind of imitation, although sometimes imitation is good, but that kind of imitation just for getting a cheap reputation, that kind of harinam will just be cheating. It won't be real harinam. Hare Krishna.
And Madhupati Prabhuji has quoted some unnecessary creepers growing with the bhakti creeper are the creepers of behavior, unacceptable for those trying to attain perfection, diplomatic behavior, animal killing, mundane profiteering, mundane adoration, and mundane importance. All these are unwanted creepers. And the reference is Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19.159.
Yes, the list is there. Quite an extensive discussion in regard to the Gundicha Marjana, cleansing of the Gundicha temple. The weeds can get quite subtle. It can really look like the devotional creeper. But one has to be properly guided and vigilant.
Should we proceed to text 32? Guru Maharaj, we have some time.
Yes. Nata paritaro loke pumsasvarta vyatikramaha yad adhad yasya prayastvam atmanasva vyatikramat. There's no stronger obstruction to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. Purport. Human life is especially meant for self-realization. Self refers to the super self and the individual self, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. When, however, one becomes more interested in the body and bodily sense gratification, he creates for himself obstructions on the path of self-realization. By the influence of Maya, one becomes more interested in sense gratification, which is prohibited in this world for those interested in self-realization. Instead of becoming interested in sense gratification, one should divert his activities to satisfy the senses of the Supreme Soul. Anything performed contrary to this principle is certainly against one's self-realization. These verses are very much to the point. They're important verses for understanding our present position. Na'ata parataro loke, in this world, there's nothing greater for destroying one's self, as we read in the previous verse, than to think that anyasya prayaswam, thinking that something else is more dear, something else is more precious, something else is more pleasing than spiritual realization. We see that practically. Yeah, I'd like to come to the kirtan, but I've got something else to do. What is that something else to do? The soccer match or whatever it is that he wants to watch. So many things, and especially sex life. These fools are all busy in spiritual life, but we have something higher. So as soon as one thinks there's something higher than spiritual realization, something sweeter than spiritual realization, something more important than spiritual realization, one is lost. One is lost. Then pratikul one becomes engaged in things unfavorable for devotional service. Bahirmukjiv, he becomes a living entity looking away from Krishna to something more dear than serving Krishna. Distraction comes about in this way. We're chanting, but something else is more dear to our attention, more dear to our, more deserving of our interest than the sound of the holy name. So in so many ways, the spiritual master sends one on a mission, that he becomes interested in, just like that, who was it? Krishnadas was lured by the gypsies, essentially, because it appeared that there was something at that moment more pleasing than service to the Lord. And this is Maya.
We have a question, I think, or a comment by Priti Purnamati Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, is it in someone's control to consider other subject matters more pleasing than one's self-interest, as we are all under the clutches of Maya to different degrees? What is it that stops the living entity to relish more nectar in self-interest, even after externally being engaged in devotional service?
Kamesha Krodesha Rajaguna Samudbhava, lust, greed, anger, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Mada, madness, illusion, envy. These things all push. Essentially, it's false ego, identifying with matter and thinking, therefore, that this is my this is my that. Sense gratification, and gratifying my senses will be more pleasing. We see that, some brahmachari is supposed to be in Bhagavatam class, but he's on the internet, looking at something or other, whether it's the news or porn or what have you. And at that moment, he's thinking, this is more important for me. This takes precedent. He's not exactly thinking that, but it takes command of his consciousness. This is what I want to be doing. Otherwise, why is he doing it? He thinks that somehow this is more pleasing. Why should I be sitting in the class? And it's Maya, plain and simple. And it can be plain and simple Maya, or as we were discussing, it can be subtle. It seems to be devotional service. I'm really looking at something that's necessary for, but then one thing leads to another thing, and distraction is completely prominent. All these Cheto, Darpana, Marjanam, so the heart has to be cleansed. When it's not cleansed, then all of those other things are there in the heart, and one cherishes them. One thinks, this is me, this is mine, this is part of who I am. But it's all stuff that's in the way of devotional service. He's thinking, so many things. This is more, attachment. Vita, raga, paya, krodha. In short, Maya. It's not more pleasing, but he thinks it's more pleasing. That's Maya.
Guru Maharaj, we do have something in the chat box, but I wanted to share something that I heard from Srila Prabhupada in one of his classes. He said a materialistic person is captivated by so many objects of sense gratification. That is his prison house. Maya's capturing power. And then Srila Prabhupada gave an example. He said a fish has enough food in the ocean that Krishna has provided, but no, he has to go for the bait at the end of the fishing pole, and therefore he is captured. Just for the sense of taste, he loses his life for the tongue. Now a bee enters a flower for nectar, but at sunset is trapped by the lotus flower, all for the pursuit of enjoying the sense of smell, and so it's captured and dies. Similarly, a big elephant, powerful, loses his life because it chases a female elephant for enjoyment and falls in a trap, a ditch that's set out by the hunters that have used the female elephant as a bait. And the deer is also falls prey to music that the hunter plays before killing it. So Srila Prabhupada said that everyone is finally falling prey to his senses, but a human being is expected to not, although they have all the senses that are sort of powerful, in not just one sense that's necessarily powerful. He's supposed to have developed consciousness. But when you talked about like when someone has amnesia and dementia, then they don't even know that they need to eat. Like the basic Maya, which is Annamaya, the searching for food, thinking that, well, once I get food, then that's all that your consciousness can drive you towards is food. But somebody who has dementia, until you feed them, they won't ask for food. So how is then that person in a human body, but their consciousness can't even meet the basic level?
Well, yeah, there's two things. Essentially, yes, that person is deprived of intellect, which is cruel in one sense, a cruelty of fate, that he may have been a great professor, but now he doesn't know that he has to eat. So that sort of ability inability to discriminate is imposed. There's not much one can do about it. But what's under discussion here is where one does apparently have one's intellect and so on, but it's ruined because of attraction to sense gratification. So the one situation, what can be done? But the other situation, also what can be done, but he has the power to turn toward Krishna, but he's so bewildered by attraction to something else that he thinks, no, why should I become Krishna conscious? Or why should I act for Krishna?
And we have a question in the chat box by Murari Prabhuji. Jay Maharaj, how does the soul interact with the brain and the mind so that the soul is pure, but the consciousness that manifests is distorted?
Well, that's a large question. We have 2 minutes left. I don't think we can answer that in the time allocated. But there's a subtle connection between Asangahiyam Purusha. The soul has nothing to do with the material body, but by the arrangement of material energy or by false identification, he becomes associated with the body. And then that association takes, there's all sorts of mechanics that go into our connection with matter, our ability to do something like raise our hand and screw in a light bulb or something. Again, we can't do justice to this question in the remaining 1 minute. So if you like, we can hold it for the next session.
Yes, thank you so much. Would Priti Purna Madhvi Mataji like to lead us in closing kirtan?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripurajapacharya Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Pranams to all the Vaishnavas. Thank you so much for joining the Sangha. His Holiness Jayādvaita Maharaj Shri Ki Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.